Part 2. Roy, you made a comment about Christ being into love and all, and I believe he was. However, that love was accompanied by violence when he saw sin. And by violence, I mean that he wasn't afraid to create a whip, if you will, and drive the money changers out of the temple. His mission, I believe, can be summed up in Luke 4:16 through 19. Now, this is when Christ was in the synagogue, and to save time, I will not read the whole thing, but Christ said he was there to preach the gospel to the poor, and the poor not being poverty-stricken, as we would say today, or in Appalachia, as we see quite frequently, or in the cities of New Orleans, or the city of New Orleans, or in the cities of New York, or LA, or the ghettos, or Middle East. Not poverty, but the poverty of spirit, poverty of God, when you don't have God. The Gentiles, or the lost Jews. To heal the brokenhearted. Again, this points to God. The captives to sin, the blind to God. That was the mission of Christ. The greatest commandment, Christ said, was to, and again Matthew 22:37, to love God, and he lists a couple things. You know, with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and that means to love God above all else. Now, we're talking about love, and yes, indeed, you can love, two men can love each other, two women can love each other, and you can love animals. And I know you've covered that quite well, Roy, but we're talking about a love here that goes above and beyond what humanity can offer within itself. It's the love of God. Augustine has said, "You are commanded to love God with all your heart, that your whole thoughts, that's with all your soul, that your whole life, that's with all your mind, that your whole understanding may be given to him with whom you have that you give. Thus he has left no part of our life which may justly be unfulfilled of him or give place to desire for any other final good. But if aught else present itself for the soul's love, it should be absorbed into that channel in which the whole current of love runs. For a man is then the most perfect when his whole life tends towards the life unchangeable and clings to the whole purpose of his soul." We cannot give place to any of our desires that does not run with the river of God's love. And I'm not saying that we cannot love our family, we cannot love our children, we cannot love our job. Love, as you know, in the English language, is tossed around too frequently for too many things. I love the camera that I'm looking at. I love my laptop. I really love my laptop. But we're talking about the love of God, and that love of God covers all. And if our love of the things around us, whether it's the love of women, a man can love a woman in a very wrong way. It can be pure lust. It can be an adolescent love, a juvenile love, a love that is unknown or unqualified by maturity. But if it doesn't fall in there with God, whether it's between a man and a woman, then it's not a love worth having. The love of God has to cover everything in our lives, all the actions, everything that we do. The love of Christ, and this goes back to our foundation. I do not believe Christ was simply a good man or a good prophet. I don't believe that his wisdom is 2,000 years old. It's a current wisdom. It's a wisdom relevant to today. It's a wisdom that's relevant to tomorrow, just as it was 2,000 years ago. Paul wrote to the church of Ephesians that Christ dwells in our hearts, 3:17 through 19, that we are rooted and grounded in love, and this is the love of Christ, that we may be able to comprehend with all the saints. And I don't see Paul just meaning that that's one congregation in one generation, but all the saints. What is the width and length and depth and height? To know the love of Christ, which passes knowledge, that you may be filled with all the fullness of God. So yeah, Christ was indeed all about the love. But that love was to sinners, and that love was to God, and that love which passes all knowledge can fill us with the fullness of God, so that our desires and our lusts and those things that are contrary to God are easily dismissed. Sometimes more easily than others, mind you. But I want to finish up real quick with the idea of natural versus good. The natural man does not receive the things of the Spirit of God, and they are foolishness to him, nor can he know them because they are spiritually discerned. 1 Corinthians 2:14. There's two ways. We see that in Judaism. We see that in ancient Judaism, rather, in Second Temple Judaism, especially with the so-called Deuterocanon, the wisdom books of Wisdom of Solomon and the Book of Sirach. We see that with Christ. We see that with Paul. No man can serve two masters. We see that there's two ways, a spiritual way and a natural way. A natural way, which is earthly, which is fleshly, which is carnal, to use the Old King James. And we see the spiritual way, which is of God, which is of Christ, which is something that looks forward to leaving the planet, as you might say, to leaving our natural constraints. The natural looks to the future on earth. The spiritual looks to the future above. Jude 1:10, 1:19, but these speak evil of, and these natural men, of whatever they do not know, and whatever they know naturally, like brute beasts and things they corrupt themselves. I'm not talking about the evilness of men or anything like that, but men can speak naturally. And so we see that they understood, the apostles understood, that Christ understood that men were natural, but he called them to be more spiritual. Not given into our natural lust, not given into our natural desires, but given into something, or trying to attain something. Paul said he pressed forward to the mark of the higher calling. So Paul had to leave a lot of his natural desires, and if you read into Paul, you'll see that a lot of his natural desires, or his desires, were natural. He spoke a lot of marriage and lust and longing, and he spoke of things that you could tell perhaps that in his spirit he was naturally probably a very angry man, and a little bit tempered in some ways. It slips out every now and then. I think that most people would agree that Paul would have been delightful in any conversation that he had. Jude further calls some of these people sensual persons, natural, who live by their senses, and they cause divisions because they have not the Spirit. Now, we can find these people in the church. We can find these people generally living anywhere. These natural people who live by the senses, and our natural desire is for a lot of things. Is to give into what we need and what we want. It's natural for a man when he sees a woman to turn his head in lust. It's not wise if you're married, but it's natural. It's natural for people to give into temptations, but it's not always spiritual. It's natural to hate. It's natural to destroy, but it's not natural to conserve. It's not natural to love. And that's what I mean when I say natural versus spiritual. Racism, which you brought up, and which is part of a certain denomination from Utah, was for a long time in that denomination. And to be honest with you, it wasn't just that denomination. There was no codified rules in the denominations of the old world, but racism existed and still exists a lot of times today. And I believe you see that ever awakening with the coming inauguration of our soon-to-be president-elect. But that's a natural feeling. That's a natural feeling to say, that's not one of us. He's not us. We don't want him. So, well, that's the end of part 2, and we'll do part 3